For decades, global geopolitics has been shaped not by the elected leaders of nations, but by a hidden and insidious force, the deep state. This covert network, comprising intelligence agencies, corporate elites, bureaucratic operatives, and NGOs, has orchestrated regime changes, manipulated economies, and controlled narratives under the guise of democracy and free speech. While the West, particularly the United States, masqueraded as the champion of global democracy, it was, in reality, a puppet of European colonialist interests, the very lobby that had indirectly colonized America after World War II. However, the tides have turned, and with the dismantling of the deep state, the world stands at a crucial crossroads. The US is aligning itself with Russia-led BRICS+, leaving behind the tiny, hypocritical, and declining European powers to face their darkest realities. The concept of the deep state can be traced back to post-World War II, when the United States emerged as the new global superpower. However, behind the facade of American dominance lay the lingering influence of European colonialist structures. The financial institutions, intelligence agencies, and corporate conglomerates that shaped US foreign policy were largely European-influenced entities, ensuring that the US remained an enforcer of European interests rather than an independent global power. Post-war diplomatic institutions such as NATO, the European Union, and the United Nations were not just alliances, but strategic tools to maintain a Western hegemony over emerging nations. Through intelligence agencies like the CIA and MI6, and organizations such as the World Bank and IMF, these European-controlled institutions manipulated global economies, toppled leaders unfavorable to Western corporate interests, and installed puppet regimes that catered to their neoliberal agendas. The deep state operated through a multi-pronged strategy: media manipulation. The narrative of democracy, human rights, and free speech was selectively promoted. Western media, particularly those headquartered in Europe and the US, controlled the global discourse, portraying interventions as noble missions while covering up the atrocities committed by the West. Regime change operations. Covert operations orchestrated by intelligence agencies led to political instability in nations that resisted Western influence. Notable examples include Operation Ajax in Iran in 1953, the removal of Patrice Lumumba in the Congo in 1961, and the Ukraine crisis in 2014, all orchestrated to install pro-Western governments. Economic warfare. Western financial institutions imposed sanctions, devalued currencies, and manipulated trade policies to weaken non-aligned states. The 2008 financial crisis was not just a market failure, but a deliberate scheme to consolidate Western banking control over global economies. Corporate influence. Multinational corporations played a crucial role in maintaining the deep state's hold. Be it oil conglomerates in the Middle East or pharmaceutical giants controlling public health narratives, these entities ensured that non-Western economies remained dependent on Western products and services. The 2016 US elections were a turning point. Donald Trump's unexpected victory was a direct challenge to the deep state's grip over American politics. His presidency saw the unraveling of covert alliances, the exposure of intelligence agency corruption, and the defunding of NGOs that served as fronts for Western regime change operations. By labeling the deep state as America's greatest enemy, Trump signaled the beginning of a geopolitical realignment. For decades, the United States acted as Europe's enforcer, ensuring NATO expansion, funding European security, and bearing the brunt of economic consequences, while European elites reaped the benefits. However, as the European Union faced economic decline, internal disunity, and increasing irrelevance on the world stage, America began its strategic shift. The once powerful Western alliance fractured, with the US focusing on strengthening ties with emerging economies rather than clinging to its European burdens. As the deep state crumbles, the global power equation is shifting. The US, under a post-deep state leadership, finds itself increasingly aligned with the Russia-led BRICS+ bloc. This realignment represents economic independence. Moving away from the IMF and World Bank, nations within BRICS Plus are establishing alternative financial systems, de-dollarizing trade, and reducing dependency on Western banking systems. Strategic sovereignty. Unlike NATO's coercive diplomacy, BRICS Plus allows member states to operate without the constant threat of military intervention or economic sanctions. Technological advancements, with nations like Russia, China, and India leading in sectors like AI, space exploration, and quantum computing, BRICS Plus is set to challenge the West's technological monopoly. Once colonial overlords, European nations now find themselves as relics of a bygone era, clinging to outdated institutions and a false sense of superiority. Their economies are crumbling, their societies are divided, and their influence on global politics is diminishing. The very nations that looted the world under colonialism now preach democracy and human rights while funding destabilization efforts in Africa, the Middle East, and South Asia. Hypocrisy of free speech and democracy. While European governments criticize other nations for alleged suppression of free speech, their own records are filled with censorship laws, media manipulation, and suppression of dissent. Julian Assange's persecution by the UK, France's brutal crackdowns on protests, and Germany's increasing control over online discourse exposed the sham of Western liberalism. Europe's days as a dominant force are over. With economic stagnation, declining birth rates, energy crises, and increasing irrelevance in global decision-making, European nations are being reduced to mere spectators in the rise of a new world order. The shift of global power from the West to the East is undeniable, and Europe must now reconcile with its weakest and tiniest role in modern geopolitics. The fall of the deep state marks the end of Western hegemony. The US is no longer a mere pawn of European elites, but is charting its own course alongside BRICS Plus. The hypocrisy of the West has been exposed. Its tiny, weakening influence is met with disdain rather than admiration. The world is no longer dictated by colonial relics masquerading as defenders of democracy. The new world order is multipolar, driven by sovereignty, economic independence, and true partnerships rather than coercion. Europe must now accept its diminished role, for the age of Western dominance is over, and the era of the global South has begun.